Hey friends, in this video I'm going to be giving you some helpful information to know as you talk to your Hindu friends. What are some good little bits of information you can have to have good talking points to dive into really genuine and friendly and deep conversation with them about what they believe and also have a chance to share what you believe. Let's jump in. Hey friends, I'm Ash Leatherwood, your friendly neighborhood apologist. And recently I released a video on how to share your faith and have a meaningful conversation with your Hindu friends. So if you want to see how to do just that, some skills and tools I'll give you to have those conversations, then go look at one of my earlier videos on how to do that. This, however, is going to be little bits of information you can incorporate into those conversations to really get to good talking points, to find common ground as well as core differences that you can talk about with your Hindu friends. So I recommend that you actually watch both of these videos. One's going to be the skills and the tools. There's going to be the information you can combine with these skills and tools to really have these really beneficial conversations on religion and what's really important to us with your Hindu friends. So some helpful bits of information I would give you is just that first, primarily, a big difference between Hinduism and what I believe as a Christian is in Hinduism, there's a plurality of gods. There's a whole bunch of gods, whereas for me as a Christian, I believe in one God who created the heavens and the earth and everything in it. However, an interesting thing about Hinduism is that these gods have a beginning. They're not eternal like I believe God is, existing always and then ultimately Him being the creator of everything. The Hindu gods have a beginning, which is really interesting because that means that nothing goes back indefinitely into the past. There's a precise moment, and before that, it's we don't really know. Interestingly, some accounts date Vishnu as being one of the oldest gods. He hatches from an egg, and then from his belly button grows Brahma, and Brahma is known as being the creator of everything. However, the interesting thing is that, so Vishnu comes first, right? Then Brahma comes from Vishnu. Brahma opens his eyes, he looks up, and he sees sky, and then he sees water. So we see that there's already a world that exists before these first gods come to exist and ultimately go on to create everything else. So the creation account in Hinduism is actually quite different from the creation account in Christianity in Genesis. Because in Hinduism, there's already a world that exists, and then these gods come to exist somehow, and then they create the rest of the world. Whereas in Christianity, we believe that God has already existed, but that the world didn't exist. He himself is the creator of the world. He's the creator of all things. And he himself had no creator. He had no beginning. So an interesting talking point with a Hindu friend could be this, So in Hinduism, right, there's already a world that exists. Vishnu comes, then Brahma comes. So first, where did the world come from? It already existed before Brahma did creation. And where did Vishnu and Brahma come from? They had a beginning, so what's their cause? What created them? Is there a grander God above them? Is there a God who created the world before them? That's going to be an interesting talking point. That's going to be good for you to know. Maybe just set the beginning, the beginning of the story. Where did the world come from? Where did the gods come from? They had a beginning. Why are there so many of them? What exactly are they? They use the title God, but are they exactly what I as a Christian would mean by God? I don't think so. However, one of the major talking points that I use when talking to my Hindu friends is going to be this idea of sacrifice and the relationship between humans and the gods, or humans and God, singular. And that's going to be that we're all seeking to be in a relationship with the gods, right? Hindus are going to do lots of sacrifices and rituals honoring the gods. I've been to several temples and seen the rituals. It's very fascinating. Now we as Christians also believe in this idea of sacrifice, that because God is perfect and we are sinners, we've rebelled against God, we're separated from Him, sacrifice must happen. And that's going to be actually common ground between Hinduism and Christianity. And this is going to be a main talking point. If you don't remember anything else from this video, remember this. In one of their holy books of Hinduism, the Bhagavad Gita, it says that there is no forgiveness of sins without sacrifice in blood. This will be a huge bridge, a huge place of common ground between Christians and Hindus. The Bhagavad Gita, one of their biggest, most important holy books says there's no forgiveness of sins without sacrifice and blood. So Hindus do give sacrifices on their shrines to their gods, but Christians also believe in sacrifices. Similarly, we believe that for the forgiveness of sins, there must be a sacrifice. That all throughout the Mosaic Law in the Old Testament, we see that sacrifices put in place for the forgiveness of people. That they would sacrifice a lamb without blemish to take away the sins of the people. Now, it's not that we as Christians believe that these animals actually take away the sins, but they're actually foreshadow of how God himself must provide a perfect sacrifice that we as humans cannot provide. And he does that by taking on flesh, coming as Jesus, living a perfect life, once again being unblemished, dying this death as this sacrificial lamb on the cross, paying the price for our sin, and then rising again, showing to have the authority and the power to forgive our sins. And that's why it's so important that Jesus is God. Just a guy couldn't pay for the sins of the world. Even if this guy was perfect, the only sins he could pay for would be his own, which is kind of contradiction in terms because he's perfect. But a perfect guy couldn't pay for the sins of the world. He'd only make himself get to heaven. It must be God himself, divine, who can pay for the sins of all people. And that's why Jesus himself must be God, just as he claimed. Died on that cross and rose again, proving just that, proving to have the authority to forgive sins, so that anyone who believes in Jesus and calls on his name can be saved, can have this forgiveness of sins, and enter a relationship with the living God. So that's going to be a major talking point. The Bhagavad Gita says there's no forgiveness of sins without the sacrifice and blood. And that's going to be a helpful question you could ask your Hindu friends, what is the sacrifice for you guys? For us, the sacrifice is Jesus. So I don't need to worry about providing a sacrifice because God himself provides the sacrifice for us through Jesus. And that's how I can have assurance of being in relationship with God, having my sins forgiven, and going to heaven and not hell. For you, who provided the sacrifice? Did Shiva provide the sacrifice? Did Vishnu provide the sacrifice? Did Brahma provide the sacrifice? Who provides the sacrifice in blood for your sin? How do you know your sin is forgiven? And that's me. So we've talked about creation. We've talked about fallenness, our sin, and how there must be a sacrifice. That's me, place of common ground. But also, this is where it's going to divert. So where do they find the sacrifice of sins? Where do they find the forgiveness of sins? And ultimately, what is the point? So what's the point of this life? And even more so, what comes after this life? Now, many Hindus believe in reincarnation, but there's also this idea of heaven and hell. This place where there's this great place, and there's this bad place that people can go after they die. So there's this idea of reincarnation based on who you talk to. That might be the whole thing. It might just be reincarnation. You might ask, okay, who chooses how I'm reincarnated? How do I get reincarnated as something greater? When does reincarnation end? And then you can also ask about heaven and hell. How do we get to heaven? Who goes to hell? How do you know about this? How does that make you feel? And there might be a lot of fear associated with that. Just the lack of knowledge of where someone's going. If they're reincarnated, how they're going to come back. If they're not reincarnated and there is a heaven and hell, where they're going to go. That's going to be a great source of conversation. But really, those are going to be the three main talking points I would give you to talk to your Hindu friends. First, creation. Where does the world come from? I, as a Christian, don't have a problem with believing that the Hindu gods might actually be real beings, that are spiritual beings. I, of course, think that they're evil, as seen in their own stories, killing and lying and raping each other. Maybe they're demons, it's possible. But even in the Hindu stories, these gods have a beginning and the world exists before they get there. So what is the ultimate creator of the world? This ground of all reality and goodness, this creator, who is that? Then, of course, we as humans are sinful, so we try to appease the gods, or God singular, with sacrifices. We see in the Bhagavad Gita that there's no forgiveness of sins without sacrifice and blood. So who provides that sacrifice for you guys? For me, it's easy. Jesus did exactly that. And that's why I can have assurance of my sins forgiven and of new life with the living God continuing beyond the grave. For them, what does that look like? What happens when they die? What's the point of the sacrifices of appeasing the gods? Are they going to be reincarnated? How does that work? Are they going to go to heaven? Are they going to go to hell? How do they know? How does that make them feel? This would be great talking points just to get to really understand what they believe, what matters to them, how that shapes their outlook and lifestyle. And really, that's going to be a great way for you to share your own beliefs, the hope that you found in Jesus if you're a Christian, and get to share this hope with them. So I hope you guys found this video helpful. I hope that you get out there, you start talking to Hindu friends, you use these talking points to really understand what matters to them, and you get to share the gospel with them of how your life's been changed by Jesus. If you found this video helpful, then please like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. Having said that, I will see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.